Greetings and welcome to this presentation on a human rights-based approach to internal displacement in the context of disasters and climate change. I'm Matthew Scott, Senior Researcher in Human Rights, Disasters and Displacement at the Raoul Wallenberg Institute of Human Rights and Humanitarian Law, and I'll be speaking about this topic based on the experience of a 3-year research initiative under the Raoul Wallenberg Institute's Human Rights and Environment program that examined internal displacement and legal and policy responses in 10 countries in Asia and the Pacific. In the presentation, I will touch upon 3 points. The first being why adopt a human rights-based approach at all. The second being what is a human rights-based approach? And thirdly, how does that human rights-based approach apply in the specific context of internal displacement? So we'll be reflecting on international standards and guidelines and good practices for integrating human rights-based approaches in this context. So we'll now turn to the first element, which is why adopt a human rights-based approach at all? The reasons for adopting a human rights-based approach to the phenomenon of internal displacement are the same as the general reasons for integrating human rights into development processes in general as part of the Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals priorities. What we can see when we consider adopting a human rights-based approach is that there's extensive reference to this ambition in key elements of the post-2015 development agenda, as well as in more specialized international standards and guidelines relating specifically to the topic of internal displacement in the context of disasters and climate change. For people working in the context of disaster risk reduction and even climate change adaptation, the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction will be well known. What might be less well known is the existence at paragraph 19c of an express encouragement to relevant actors to adopt this human rights-based approach. And at paragraph 19d, the ambition is further developed, paying particular attention to the situation of persons in different conditions of vulnerability, such as persons with disabilities, children, and paying particular attention to the gender dimension, which cuts throughout this approach. But it's not only the Sendai framework, which reflects this ambition to integrate a human rights-based approach. We also see it in a bespoke document developed back in 1998 called the UN Guiding Principles on Internal Displacement. This document develops a comprehensive framework for thinking about the kinds of measures that particularly states should adopt to address the need to prevent the conditions that give rise to displacement in the first place, to protect people during displacement, and to facilitate durable solutions to displacement. And throughout this set of guiding principles, human rights standards are articulated and developed. But as I say, there are multiple other standards and guidelines that also articulate how a human rights-based approach relates to the phenomenon of internal displacement in particular, and these we develop in further detail in a background brief developed as part of the 10-country research initiative. This is the background brief on key international standards and guidelines relating to internal displacement in the context of disasters and climate change. And I recommend having a look at that 30-page document because it gives a comprehensive overview of the relevant standards and how they relate to these different phases of displacement, namely prevention of displacement, protecting people during displacement, and facilitating durable solutions to displacement. And just to reiterate the important point, that this human rights-based approach is expressly endorsed within the Agenda 23 initiatives and the Sustainable Development Goals. So without a human rights-based approach, we have a harder time achieving those goals.